Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open House New York weekend at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. My name is Cindy Vanden Bosch, and I'm going to be one of your hosts today. I'm the president of Turnstile Tours, and if you're not familiar with Turnstile Tours, our company is a social enterprise that offers tours in partnership with different nonprofit organizations around New York City. And what we do as a company is we're really seeking to advance public knowledge about the meaning of place and community. And in the case of our program today, we're going to take a deep dive into the site of the Brooklyn Army Terminal. We are so grateful for all of you who are out there joining us today for this virtual program. We'd also like to express our thanks to Open House New York for inviting us to participate, and to the New York City Economic Development Corporation, which is the nonprofit that manages the Brooklyn Army Terminal, which today is a center of manufacturing, as we will learn during the program. Now, before we get into that, we are tour guides, and I'm not just going to be, I'm here at home, but we have guides that are out on site at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, and we'll be using this virtual format to not only explore the history and the architecture of the site, but also to go live with guests who are from various organizations and businesses that are based inside this industrial complex. But before we do that, I'd like to share how we want to interact with you. So I have a colleague behind the scenes named Stefan Dreisbach-Williams, who is typing away doing the closed captioning for us today. So if you would like to use the closed captioning and you're on Zoom, please just click the CC button so that you can see those live captions on the screen. There might be some noisy spaces that we'll be going to today, and so the captions will be helpful in that respect. We also are guides, and we want to hear from you. We want this to be interactive, even though we're using a webinar format. So in order to ask your questions, share your stories, we'd love to hear them, and we'll try to sprinkle them into the program throughout. And so in order to do that, you just need to click the chat box button on your screen, and you can select all panelists, which will just send messages to those of us that are behind the scenes or hosting. Or if you want everyone who's watching to see what you have to say or see your question or story, then select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can join the conversation. So a few, just for Turnstile Tours during this time, it's been hard for us not to be able to do tours in person. Usually on Open House New York weekend, we give tours for up to 1,000 people of the Atrium in years past. But of course, because of the pandemic, now we're going virtual this year. And in fact, we've been going virtual with our programming really since March. We've done over 150 of these kinds of programs. So I just wanted to quick share with you some of our upcoming programs in case you might be interested. So for Open House New York weekend, in addition to the Brooklyn Army Terminal, I think that's the wrong screen there. We need a different screen there, Doug. We're seeing, we need the slideshow if you want to log out and log back in. So we are doing this program here, and then at 4 o'clock today, we're going to be going live on Facebook Live to Dry Dock 1, which is the oldest dry dock at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. It dates back to 1851. Then tomorrow morning for Open House New York weekend, also a free program. We're partnering up with the Prospect Park Alliance to offer a program that will take you live out to the well house and waterways of Prospect Park. So we're looking forward to sharing that with you. And then there's a whole array of recorded virtual programs that you can also watch if you go to turnstilettours.com/OHNY. If you want to get out into the city and explore on your own, we've also designed maps by our in-house cartographer, Andrew Gustafson, of a walking tour around the perimeter of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, as well as an East River Ferry tour that has a printout, and you can reference the map as you go along. We're also doing some other programs, one about Thai cuisine with 2 chefs on Tuesday, We'll be speaking with Bob Leiby, who is one of the leading experts on potatoes this next Saturday. And then we'll be learning about the restoration of rail freight to Staten Island on Friday, October 30th. In order to help us continue to do the work that we're doing, we have memberships which happen, which give you access both to live programs as well as recorded programs. And it really helps us do the work that we do. So we appreciate any support that you can provide to help us get through this time and also help keep telling stories of the partners that we've been working with for so many years. So on today's program, I think we can pull down the slide here, and we're going to go live in just a few minutes to my colleague Andrew. But for those of you that are perhaps not familiar with the Brooklyn Army Terminal or where it's based, the Brooklyn Army Terminal is in a neighborhood called Sunset Park, which is in South Brooklyn. And it is at 58th Street and First Avenue. That's one of the main entrances, but it's a gigantic complex. It's about 4 million square feet of space. And at the time that it was built in World War I, it was the largest poured concrete structure in the world. And of course, it was built as the Army Terminal, as a federal facility. And so we're going to learn about that history today, but we're also going to have the chance today to meet some of the businesses that are based inside the Brooklyn Army Terminal. And these businesses include Fabscrap, which is a nonprofit organization that is really sort of working to reduce waste in the fashion industry. So reduce a lot of that fabric waste. And so we'll get to see their warehouse space and the work they're doing there. Then we're going to make our way to Spark Workshop, which is a maker space. And they offer workshops, classes, and memberships. And we're going to take a peek behind the scenes with their founder. And then we'll go to Uncommon Goods, which is one of the founding members of this certified B Corporation movement, which is companies that have a triple bottom line. Turnstile Tours also happens to be a certified B Corporation. So we're going to have a chance to talk to the president and CEO, David Bolotsky, there, and see a bit behind the scenes at their space as well. But without further ado, I would like to welcome Andrew Gustafson to the program. And he is now live on site out just outside of Building A. And I'll show you a couple of photos here, just so you can get an orientation of sort of where he's standing. So we're seeing here the complex itself and a pier that juts out there. And then looking back, sort of closer to where Andrew is standing, over just about right here where my cursor is on the screen. So Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you.
Yeah, hi everybody. So things are a little different this year. Normally I'd be giving 5 tours a day on Saturday and Sunday at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. It's really one of our biggest days of the year, but I'm glad to see we have so many people joining us today. We have about the same number of people that we would have on one of our hourly tours that we do during Open House New York. So thank you so much to everybody for joining us. And again, thanks to OHNY and to the NYC EDC. And I just wanted to, again, thank all of the people who are joining us today, who've been joining us throughout the pandemic for all of our programs, and a special thanks to our members. So if you want to find out more about how you can support our work, go to our website at turnstyletours.com and become a member. We would love to have you join our future programs. But a little bit about where I am and what we're going to see today. So as Cindy mentioned, I'm standing in front of Building A, which is this big warehouse building right behind me. You can also see one of the sky bridges over my right shoulder. And so we're going to talk more about how this place was built, why it was built, and how it functioned. So this was built during World War I to serve as the main military supply base. It's not completed until after the war, but it really is a remarkable feat of engineering. And we'll walk you through the history as we go through the program today. I want to show you one more thing, which is we are going to take a look out over the water Cindy showed us some aerial shots, but I'll give you a little view here. So we can see the 4 main buildings of the complex. We're going to spend time in building A and building B. We won't go inside this building. This is our powerhouse, the boiler house, which doesn't operate anymore. But you can see we have the pier here and NYC ferry docks here. And we can look out over the harbor and see Staten Island in the distance. And then this building right here, this is building A. And building B in the distance, which is where we're going to cut to in just a minute with Amanda. And then if you joined us for the program we did a couple of weeks ago for National Manufacturing Day, we visited this building, which is the Annex. So we're going to visit 3 tenants today, but there's over 100 in the Army terminal. So we'll profile 3 today. We profiled 3 about 2 weeks ago. So again, you can go to our website and you can check out that past program as well to learn about some of the buildings in the Annex and in other sectors. But without further ado, I guess we're going to make our way over to our first stop. So I'll see you in a few minutes, Cindy.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andrew. So we're now going to welcome Amanda and Emily, who are at Fabscrap in Building B. Amanda, welcome. Amanda is one of our staff members. She's there with Emily, who is from Fabscrap. And we're so excited to take this virtual tour of your space today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda. As Cindy and Andrew mentioned, I'm here at Fabscrap in Building B of the Brooklyn Army Terminal to talk a little bit about what their business does and what they're doing today with a group of volunteers that are about to be here in about 20 minutes. So let's get talking to Emily and see the space. Come on, computer.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fabscrap. I'm Emily, our digital communications coordinator.
So Emily, can you tell us a little bit about Fabscrap and what you do and just a little bit about the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Fabscrap is a New York-based nonprofit, Brooklyn Army Terminal, Building B. We just celebrated our 4-year anniversary this September, and we're focused on making the fashion and design industries more sustainable by diverting textile waste from landfill. So we offer a recycling service to over 450 brands, designers, companies, and we pick up and process all this material, and then we make as much as possible available for reuse and recycle everything else.
All right, so I know that a lot of what you do is working with volunteers to help the company move along. So let's take a tour of the space and you can tell us a bit about what you're going to be doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this space is where we sort through any material that comes in that's available for reuse. So the life cycle of fabric here is that in this trash bag mountain behind me, these are actually filled with unsorted pre-consumer textiles. So we get everything from yards and yards of fabric all the way down to tiny scraps, but nothing that's been made or worn into clothing that you might see at a store. So we pick up from brands, over 450. It's brought to Brooklyn Army Terminal where we weigh everything in. Data is super important to us because we really want to encourage a conversation about transparency and accountability. So we weigh all the material as it comes in, all the material as it's being sorted, and everything as it leaves. With the help of thousands of volunteers, we're able to sort through all these bags and boxes and collect all this data. So if you want to come over here, this is our volunteer station. For COVID, we've spaced our tables 6 feet apart so that our volunteers are able to be socially distanced and safe while wearing masks. So volunteers go through the bags and boxes and we sort by fiber type. So we sort for things that have spandex content. We sort for things that are 100% polyester, wool, and cotton. And then we also sort for materials that can be shredded and turned into recycled insulation. And lastly, we look for materials that can be reused. So this is full pieces of fabric, any types of trims, lace, sequins, leather, or fur. And the idea behind this is that we're able to provide individual data to all our clients while also recycling or reusing.
And are these the bins or the sorted bins? Is that what this is?
Yeah, so these are in process. So once these bags get full, we weigh everything out. Spandex scraps become available for purchase. And anything that's in the shred bag actually ends up being turned into this material, which is called shoddy. And this can be used as insulation, as stuffing for cushions. Really, people get so creative with it. Someone once made a coat that was stuffed with this material instead of down.
Wow. So, and it's completely 100% recycled
Absolutely.
fabric.
Amanda.
So anything that,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We have a question from the audience.
Yes.
Which is from Bob, and he wonders how many days worth of scrap are in the pile bags that we see behind you.
ooh, that is a great question. I think we get about 5,000 pounds a week that come in. So there's definitely, it takes some time. We've had thousands of volunteers in the space that are able to help us. And up to this point, over the past 4 years, we've saved over 500,000 pounds from landfill. So this is definitely going to take us through the end of 2020, if not longer. But that's why we so appreciate our volunteers, like the ones that are coming today.
And so you basically continue to add bags to the pile while slowly pulling bags off of the pile.
Absolutely. So the height will fluctuate, but there has always been.
It's never
pile
really
here.
an empty space.
No, not since we moved in. So anything that is able to be reused, we donate it to our volunteers, to schools, to other nonprofits, or we're able to sell it at discounted prices for this high-end designer fabric. And we have shopping available at our warehouse space, at our shop in Manhattan, and our online store. So this area is what we call our reuse area. So all of this material, from yarn cones, cuttings, rolls of fabric, trims, buttons, all of this was once in these trash bags that you just saw. So when people come and volunteer, it's a little bit of a treasure hunt. And then when people come to shop, it's also a little bit of a treasure hunt. At the warehouse, we sell by the pound. So everything is $5 for a pound. And at our shop in Manhattan, it's more like thrift store pricing, starting at $5 a yard.
So speaking of your shops, can you tell us a little bit about how can people shop with you? How can they get involved to volunteer? You mentioned the sorting. Is that the only thing that volunteers do, or are there other opportunities that you have for volunteers?
Yeah, so right now when volunteers come, they're either going to help us sort through bags. We also sell scraps by color. So we'll have volunteers come and help us color sort. And on occasion, volunteers will also help us roll and fold and kind of help organize the space as well. If people want to come and volunteer, we currently have sessions Monday through Fridays in the morning. And then we're doing a few Saturday sessions as well. For shopping, we're currently doing shopping by appointment only at both our Manhattan shop and at our Brooklyn warehouse. Our online store is open though, all the time, of course. And really, it's a super fun shopping experience. You never know what you're going to find. We get a lot of questions about if we have specific things in, and it's always a little bit of a treasure hunt and a mystery, but we try and help everyone find what they're looking for.
And are there other ways to support Fabscrap and the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have 3 really exciting things that are either going on or upcoming. The first is that we have a digital workshop this Tuesday evening that's going to be on Zoom with costume designer Lauren Gaston, and she's teaching us how to make fabric flowers out of scraps and ribbons. So the registration for that is on our website. We're also currently having an upcycled Halloween contest. So we really want people to share and tag any type of upcycled, creative reuse, people costume, pet costume, even Halloween decoration. And by entering that, you'll be entered in a raffle to win $50 of free fabric. So check out the Fab Fright, that's what we're calling it, section of our website. And you'll be able to find details on how to enter. And then lastly, we are having a peer-to-peer fundraiser that lasts through the end of the year. So any individual can sign up to help fundraise and support Fabscrap and have a chance at winning even more free fabric for an entire year. And we're currently operating a Halloween mini challenge. So whichever fundraiser actually raises the most by tomorrow morning will win a sewing set. So you can support those fundraisers also on our website.
Great. And I'm just going to give another, yes, Cindy, was there a question?
Yeah, we have a question from Cher. And Cher is wondering if volunteers can purchase or take fabric at a discount. How does that work?
Yeah, so as a thank you for their time, volunteers can take up to 5 pounds of free fabric at the end of their session. And we also have a volunteer discount of 30% off. I forgot to mention that another thing we offer in addition to recycling for brands is that individuals can also recycle their sewing scraps with us as well. So we can process any type of textiles, sewing scraps, buttons, anything like that. So we encourage the general public as well as our volunteers to bring those materials in to utilize our recycling service.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily, for taking the time. Scott is saying this is so cool. He mentions that in the chat box. And I just wanted to show images of your storefront, if you could tell us where that's located and also how you're managing the sort of COVID restrictions for shopping at your location in Manhattan.
Yeah, absolutely. Our shop is on 26th Street, right by the Garment District in Manhattan. And we are currently doing shopping by appointment only. So there's only up to 2 shoppers at a time for each appointment. Everyone is required to wear masks covering their nose and mouth. And we've also set up protective barriers around where we would cut fabric as well as where you would check out.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you on the program and taking time out of your volunteer day. And we hope that folks who are watching will maybe come out and volunteer or support the work that you're doing and support your fundraiser. Thank you so much for your time. And now we're going to shift gears and make our way to our next stop, which is going to be with Andrew Gustafson at Spark Workshop Brooklyn, which is a makerspace. Andrew, are you with us?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Sounds great.
Yeah, so here I am
great.
at Spark Workshop, and we are going to talk to Gary Oshis, who's going to take us on a little tour around. So, Gary, welcome.
Hey, glad to have everybody here.
So tell us a little bit about Spark Workshop, what you do here, and how you came to the Brooklyn Army Terminal.
Sure. So Spark Workshop started in 2012. It's more of a studio maker space with emphasis on studio spaces rather than so much maker space specifically. We started over in Industry City, and 2 years ago we moved here. We built the space out. We're getting very near the finish line. We're maybe about 90% finished. And we'll show you around, show you some of the membership options. And we are open under the COVID restrictions.
So you have different levels of membership and different facilities. So why don't we start with what we're looking at right here to your left?
Sure, I'll show you locker membership. It's actually called on the website storage with membership. And you get a basic 4x4 storage space. It's big enough that you can fit full sheet goods either direction. And that's our lowest level of membership. $3.99 a month.
And tell us a little bit about some of the things that your members do.
Okay, so we have a shared wood shop, and we have coming online a shared metal shop. So right now, because of the wood shop, we have a lot of woodworkers, but we're not limited to woodworking. I, for example, am a sculptor, and I do a variety of other things. And we have another sculptor here that she mainly does 3D printing. We have a few people that sort of, I guess, would fall under the line of inventor. We have some designers here that design, products and industrial applications and stuff like that. But I'd say probably half our members are some kind of woodworker.
And you're going to show us one of your projects at the end, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we take a little walk around the space?
Sure. I'll show you over to the cubicles next. So the next level up from a locker would be a cubicle space. Now you get 10 by 10, and you can set it up however you want with workbenches and leave your stuff out to work on. Whereas with the locker, you kind of have to pack everything back away when you go. If we peek next door, we can sort of see what some members have their space set up like. So she has it covered in plastic, but she's got little projects going on and neat stuff going in her space. And then the next level up from a cubicle would be a studio space. So this is a small studio. It's 200 square feet. And we also have 400 square feet studios. And I can show you one of those later, but next we'll show you the wood shop. And so as a member in the space, everybody that's here gets access to our wood shop. and that's in here. Everything in this space is dedicated to woodworking. There's a variety of tools, various table saws, panel saw, band saw. We've got planers, we've got sanders. We have a laser cutter in the back there. So pretty much anything that you'd want to do woodworking wise, you could do probably 99% of that sort of work in this space here. Okay. The next thing I'll show you is our metal shop, which is coming online. It's a little rough for wear at the moment, but it's getting pretty close.
And while we're walking, we have a question here, Cindy.
Sure.
Yeah, we have a question from Cher, and she's wondering if you have a locker membership, where do you work? Do you work in the shared workspace?
So the question is, if you have a locker membership, everybody works in the shared workspaces, right?
Yeah, the space that we're walking along right now is shared workbench space. You can see at the end here, we have one of our members, Josiah Cope, who does a lot of woodworking, building like candle holders and cutting boards and stuff like that. He puts them up on Etsy for sale. Okay. So you can see it's not quite ready yet, but it's getting pretty close now. This is our metal shop. And in this space, we have a lathe and a mill, a metal cutting bandsaw, some sharpening tools. We're putting in a welding station and a few other tools in here that'll allow us to do work on like sheet metal and stuff like that.
And where do you get some of this equipment that you have here?
So a lot of the equipment we obviously buy straight from whoever, you know, sells the piece of equipment. But I also look for good bargains used. Sometimes, for example, the lathe and the mill and the drill press in the back there, we picked up at an auction from an old sewing machine repair company that was in Long Island City, that they were closing their doors.
And I should mention what's cool about this space is that since someone was asking about the history of the Brooklyn Army Terminal, we actually used to have a craft shop for soldiers to come, and if they wanted to do kind of if they're hobbyists, they could do woodworking and metalworking and stuff like that. So that's why I really love this space, because it reminds me of the old rec center that used to be over in Building B.
Yeah, and actually the lathe and the mill probably date back that far, so they may have been here at one time.
Great, yeah. So why don't we'll step back out into this space. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what kind of members you have here? Some of them are, you know, have businesses, and some of them are hobbyists, right?
Yeah, variety of people that are here actually work full time out of the space. This is a great place if you're just starting out your business of actual, you know, hardware kind of stuff, rather than if you're a coder or something like that. So if you've got a business idea and an idea to make something, this is a great place to start out. We have a guy that does faux boxwood hedges. And I don't know, well, you can kind of see some, they're hiding under the canvas there, some in progress. I'll pull the plastic out so you can see. So he makes very nice sort of privacy hedges for people. Maybe, do you want to speak about what you do, Josiah? So this is Josiah Cope. I sort of introduced him before, and tell him what you do, Josiah.
Sure. I actually work in advertising, and so this is a little bit of a way to escape, where I actually get to build something real versus like emotional experiences that are somewhat fake. So, you know, and that's actually the name of my Etsy shop, built with my bare hands. And I usually actually just take some of the scraps from some of the other workers around here and create different things. So these are just a bunch of little charcuterie boards that I'm making with some of the cutoffs from some of the other members from the shop. So.
Great. And we had a question: is how late how often are you open? Are you open 7 days a week for your members?
It depends on your membership. Members that take the locker and the cubicle, they get 7 days a week, but they have a limited time span from 5 a.m. in the morning till 1 a.m. at night. And then if you do one of the studio spaces, then you get 24/7 access. We do have some COVID rules in place right now that constrain usage of the space a little bit, mainly in the shared shop spaces. When I can't be here, I have to limit those spaces to 4 people at a time. So you have to actually book those spaces in the off hours. So that way I can control that no more than 4 people are in those shops at those times.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Josiah, for joining us. And there's one last thing you want to show us, which is this little project you've been working on.
So I'm mainly an artist, but I have lots of other interests. So one of my interests was being more green in the world. So I took this old Cushman motor scooter, pulled out the gasoline engine, and put in all the components to make it electric. So this is my daily commuter now, back and forth from home to work.
Oh, cool. And this is you can see on the computer here, this is the battery monitor.
Mm-hmm. So right now it's showing all the cells, their charge state, and it's trying to equalize them so they all have an equal charge. There's 2 cells that are a little high with the red, and eventually it'll bleed them down and all the cells will be the same. It's called battery balancing.
Awesome, great. So I know we're just about out of time before we go to our next segment, but Cindy, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, there's just one other question, which is about whether there are laser cutters or 3D printers there.
Yeah, so someone was curious if you have any laser cutters or 3D printers here.
So we do have a laser cutter. You may have seen it hiding in the back in the wood shop. The more expensive CNC machines, we actually have a partnership with our neighbors over at Makerspace in the B building. And anybody that's a member here can use their high-end CNC equipment, or get access, I should say, because the Makerspace people actually run it for you, but you bring your files over and they'll cut it for you at their member rates.
Oh, that's great. And that was another site that we highlighted a couple of weeks ago on the program. So Gary, thank you so much. Anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I'm just glad everybody got to take a look, and hope you come on down and see us in person.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And back to you, Cindy.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we're going to go to our final business that we'll be visiting. And after that, we'll be going live to Andrew, who will be in the historic Atrium. And Andrew has actually spent many years in various different archives piecing together the story and the history of the Brooklyn Army Terminal. So we're first going to go live to David Bolotsky at Uncommon Goods. And he's going to join us for an interview. So David, we'd like to welcome you to the program.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me, Cindy?
Yeah, it's great. So it's so good to see you. And as I mentioned at the top of the program, your company, you were really one of the founding members of the certified B Corporation movement, which is a triple bottom line business model. And you're the founder and CEO of Uncommon Goods, which has been in the Brooklyn Army Terminal now for almost a couple decades, I guess. Could you tell us more about the founding story, how you got the idea to start Uncommon Goods, and what you do there?
Sure. And first of all, it's great to see you and Andrew, and enjoyed watching the tour you just went through. So prior to starting Uncommon Goods, I was a research analyst studying the retail industry. And as part of that work was looking into, and this is the mid 1990s, looking into the internet. And I was convinced the internet was going to be huge, and decided rather than writing about internet's impact on retail, I really wanted to try to build a company. And I had gone to the Smithsonian Craft Show as part of my research and saw an enormous opportunity to connect independent creators, makers, designers, similar to the ones you were just looking at, with an audience online, really taking the craft show virtual. And it's been an amazing ride. I started the business in 1991. As you mentioned, Cindy, we were a founding B Corp in 2007, which is the year we moved from Manhattan to the Brooklyn Army Terminal. Initially started the business in my apartment on the Lower East Side. As you mentioned, sustainability is a big part of what we do. And my view of sustainability is that it starts with people. So we did not outsource our warehouse. So we have 200,000, actually right now for the holiday season, I think we have about 230,000 square feet here at the Brooklyn Army Terminal over 5 different floors. And we pay our warehouse workers a minimum wage this holiday season of a total of $20 an hour. That's the lowest paid worker. And we were very active in fighting successfully for a higher minimum wage in New York State, and also for other worker-friendly policies like paid family leave, which is something we also offer. We try to be friendly to the planet as well. We sell no leather, feather, or fur products, no products that involve killing animals. And we removed all plastic fill from our packaging about 4 or 5 years ago. So trying to minimize our footprint. In terms of the products that we offer, I'm going to flip my phone here and just show you on my desk a few of our items. And you'll have to forgive me for being a little casual today. I'm just coming in from a bike ride. But this is a product that we actually designed and produced at the Brooklyn Army Terminal through a company called DRNS. This is a cotton birth month tea towel. This is the month of October. The flower is Cosmos. This is one of our early products. It's a glass water faucet. So this supposed water is actually glass sculpture. And I met the gentleman, Gary Gaidosh, who made that years ago. We worked with him for about 15 years, and unfortunately, he passed away, and now we've licensed the design from his wife. Other products, you'll have to forgive me as my fellow Met fans, this is a sort of a more mainstream type product, but it's a licensed, designed by an independent artist, map of the area around Yankee Stadium, licensed with Major League Baseball. We also have personalized mugs. You can get your likeness, your hobby of choice, and name on mugs. We designed these rainbow face masks, and they've been a big seller. And then with the election coming up, I've actually got this in plastic right now, but this is, I don't know if you can see it real well, but it's a vote ring. We also have vote necklaces, and this card explains that we make a $5 donation to the League of Women Voters for each ring and necklace. And if we have a new woman vice president, this is a shattered glass ring punching through that glass ceiling. We also sell a shattered glass necklace, as well as a shattered glass bracelet. That's our website. One thing I'm going to be showing you briefly our warehouse. But before I do that, we're going to take a quick look out the window here. So this, if you look at our parking lot, you can see this is a New York City COVID testing site. All those trailers represent places where you can get yourself tested for COVID. We require everybody that works at Uncommon Goods to have a monthly test. And ordinarily, I would have Andrew here, and so forgive my terrible cinematography, but we don't allow visitors during COVID, and I'm just masking up right now because I am leaving my office. And actually, I'm going to put my headset in so the audio can be a little better. Bear with me one moment here.
Thank you, David, for David. We really appreciate you coming in today on your day off, riding your bicycle from home. There is someone in the audience named Scott who says that he was Martha Stewart's purchasing person for 5 years and used to love getting unique and cool stuff from Uncommon Goods. My mother also is a regular, very loyal customer of Uncommon Goods. But yeah, as we make our way, we know the screen is a little bit jerky. I'm going to pull up the Made in NYC special pop-up shop that Uncommon Goods has created in partnership with Made in NYC, which is at Pratt Institute. And Made in NYC supports all kinds of makers and manufacturers all across New York City. Last week, they had this great series all about the role of manufacturing in New York. And so we can see that here. And this is a pop-up shop that features makers and manufacturers that are all across the city, and Uncommon Goods is selling their goods. So a great partnership there. But now we're going back to you, and we're now in the warehouse, right?
Yes, so this is our receiving area, and I just happened to notice one of the products that we sell. We can show the B Corp movement is growing. Let me find it on the box here. So this is a windowsill pepper planter from a company called Back to the Roots. And if you look on the box, you can see that B Corp. It's kind of like a kosher symbol, but the B symbol. So this is our receiving area. These are what the freight elevators look like at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. So we're right now on the 5th floor. We have spaces on multiple floors, but this is the freight elevator that we move all the merchandise up and down various floors. Most warehouses, you can imagine, are on one level. So it provides us with a pretty significant challenge. And there's lots of competition for the elevators, which leads to wonderful neighbor relations. But we all work it out. This is a staging area, though, and we're now going to go out of the warehouse. You can see this is one of our for COVID. So we have lots of seat closed signs trying to get people to adhere to social distancing. So I'm going to try to keep my arms steady here, Cindy.
All right.
Well,
I have my screen open so people can weight themselves where I'm stationary. But I just want to foreshadow a little bit. We're about to go to a really special space that'll give us a unique perspective on the atrium, on the historic atrium, which we're going to be talking about later on in the program. So what area are you walking through here?
So I'm now going into our break room, and I'm now going outside on the balcony. Maybe I can see Andrew. He's outside.
All right, I'm going to make your screen bigger
Is that
here.
him down there? I'm up here, Andrew.
Okay.
I see.
Oh, the sound.
So this is sort of a post-apocalyptic look. It's a brutalist style architecture. Looks like something at Blade Runner.
And is this a balcony where your staff members can take a break if they want to? David, we might not. I think we just lost David. We may have lost David's connection. But I'm going to, Andrew, are you in the atrium right now? This is kind of the perfect timing to bring Andrew on.
I am, and maybe you can see David out on the balcony right there. So, hi, David.
Oh, he's there too. So I'm
okay.
gonna, David, if you can turn your camera, you can turn, it's kind of sideways. I can add it. It's going to be a little bit, we're kind of sideways, but that's okay.
Yeah. That's okay. I don't know if he can hear. Oh, yeah, there you go.
So mine is sideways right now. Do you want me to turn it vertical?
Yeah, you can. It's just the picture is actually sideways too. Oh, there we go.
Is that better?
That is better. Yes. So now we're getting, is everyone at home seeing both of these perspectives of the railroad atrium? Because this is like the perfect transition. What a view you guys have from Uncommon Goods. David, one last question we have here is, during holiday season, like how many people during your busiest time work at Uncommon Goods?
Sure. So year round, we have a staff of about 200, and we hire 800 plus people during the holiday season. So if you've got any friends who either want to work in our warehouse or work from home doing customer service, it's a great place to work, and we are hiring.
We have a request here, if you can stay with us for a moment, to show one of yours in big screen and then the other one in big screen. So before we let you go, David, I'd like to show just your visual there from the balcony. And Andrew's going to walk us through the whole history of the site now. But just this amazing, gorgeous view. That is just unbelievable. People come from all over the world just to see this. It's really kind of a special space in place.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well, David, thank you so much. And for folks that would like to learn more about whether it's jobs at Uncommon Goods or shop for the holidays, you can obviously go to their website, and we'll drop that in the chat box right now. David, thank you so much for coming in on your day off. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Can you see me okay, Cindy? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can see you great.
Great. Sorry about the sun. I'm just going to reposition a little bit so it's not blinding everyone. So yeah, we are in the atrium, and I know we had a lot of questions about the history so far in the program. But you know, on all the tours that we do, including the ones for Open House New York, we think it's really important to highlight the past, present connections and also highlight what's going on behind the scenes in a place like this. I think so many people, you might pass this building on the Belt Parkway, or you might get a chance to walk through the atrium and you think, oh, this looks abandoned. There are thousands and thousands of people that work here and over 100 businesses. So it was really special today to get to go inside, and a special thanks to all of our guests because they came in on a Saturday. So that's something that we don't normally get to do for Open House New York. So we were glad we were able to make the best of this and turn it into an opportunity. But I'm going to share a little bit about the history. And as I mentioned before, if you missed the very top of the show, you know, the Brooklyn Army Terminal was built between 1918 and 1919 to serve as the main American military supply base for forces fighting in Europe during World War I. Now, it was designed by Cass Gilbert, who you may be familiar with, celebrated architect, but not so well known for designing industrial architecture like this. Better known for designing a lot of beautiful, very ornate buildings, including here in New York, such as the Woolworth Building and the Customs House in Lower Manhattan and many others. But he actually was a pretty accomplished industrial architect. Now, the reason why they brought him on and the reason why they built this was really because the military had a problem. When the United States joins World War I in April 1917, all of a sudden we have to raise an army of 2 million men and move it across an ocean, which is something we'd never done before. And so the Port of New York was meant to be the port that would move this army, but they really lacked sufficient facilities to really move all of the supplies that were pouring into the port. And so the idea was to build one massive warehouse here on the South Brooklyn waterfront. So really this is a machine. It is a machine for moving people and freight from rail to ships and from ships to rail. And so we're going to take a look at the main rail handling facility, which is the atrium. So I'm going to flip my camera around and I'm going to explain to you exactly what this space is that you're looking at. So you can see a few different components of it. We'll talk about the train in just a minute down below. But first, you can see if you look down this center skylight. So first of all, this is not glassed in. It was originally when it was built, but the glass was removed in the 1980s just because it wasn't functional anymore. And so, but if you look about halfway down that skylight, you can see this red, dark red metal structure spanning across. If I can get it right in the center there. That is actually 2 5-ton electric cranes. And so those would be able to move the length of the space back and forth, and they could pick up items down below on this central platform. So I'll step over here so you can see it right down the middle, the central platform where these folks are walking on. So you'll see that there's sort of this shed structure over the top. That was not there originally. That was added later because we no longer have the coverage from the weather with the glass up above. But basically those cranes, they could lower a cable right down to this central platform. They would pick up those items and they would drop them into these balconies. So the balconies are really, what sets this site apart. People, haven't seen a place that really looks like this very often. But these are offset like this so that overhead crane can reach every level and every sector of the building. Once those items were picked up, they would be moved into a warehouse, and then eventually they'd be moved through a series of sky bridges out onto a ship. So the idea is that once a piece of freight is loaded into these warehouses, it doesn't touch the ground again until it's on a ship. So this is the machine. You're moving from a train, and then there's a ship. There'd be ships waiting, about 500 feet or so to the west of where we're standing here in the atrium. So it would go through building B, across the sky bridge, through building A, and then across another sky bridge and out onto the pier. Cindy, you had a question?
No, actually, I just wanted to share a historical photo to give people a sense of what it looked like, because when you look in this space right now, you can see on the lower part of the screen that there's a roof, and that's like a roof that's over a walkway. So now
so
today,
maybe you can show us some images where that roof structure is missing.
Right. So we'll share this one from Life magazine for starters.
Yep. So here in this photo, you can see first the cable. It extends sort of through the middle of the image, but the crane is just out of view. But you can see a worker, just like David was doing before, standing on that balcony. And you can see that open area down below with the platform. So there is no roof structure up there. One important thing to note is that this space was designed before the invention of the forklift. So this was very much a human-powered facility. Everything had to be, loaded and unloaded by hand, and they actually used a fleet of electric tractors. And maybe Cindy can pull up the image that we have of electric tractors actually not being used for moving freight, but actually for a guided tour that was done for dignitaries that came here during World War II. Now, this place was designed for World War I, but not completed until after the war was over.
Andrew, can you describe what we're seeing here in the image?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for pulling this up, Cindy. So what you're seeing here are actually these electric tractors. So there were about 70 of them. They actually charged them over in Building A, and they would be used to pull around these little carts that would normally be loaded with freight. But in this case, they're taking around members of Congress and military officials during World War II. You can see the gentleman who's sitting there with his arms crossed and his legs crossed. That is Homer Groninger, who was the head of the New York Port of Embarkation. So he was the boss of this place during World War II.
You can kind of see that in the photo.
Yeah. So World War I, this place is, I'm going to flip my camera around. World War I, this place is designed for, but not finished until after the war. And then in the interwar period, it really becomes sort of a static warehouse, mostly used for storing surplus supplies from World War I. But it does serve an important role during that time period because America was at war during the interwar period. we weren't at war with another country, we were at war with alcohol. And so the Brooklyn Army Terminal actually became one of the largest storage warehouses in the country for seized alcohol. So whenever it was seized from a speakeasy or from one of these rum runners, it would be brought here where it would then be destroyed. So what you can see here is this beer being dumped out onto the tracks. And if I'll turn my camera around here, Sin, and so we can take a look at where this beer was being dumped out.
So hold on a
So
second.
you can
Andrew,
see here. Yep.
I'm just going to
So
spotlight your video so everyone can see
yep.
see this in full view.
Yep. So you can see these grates down by the railroad tracks. And if you pull up this image again, Sin,
Okay.
you can see that there's.
Oop. Sorry. Sorry.
You can see that there's this lake of beer from 10,000 barrels of beer that were destroyed here in 1927. So that was really one of the key roles here during the 1920s. Obviously, Prohibition ends in 1933, and in 1939 is when this place actually starts to ramp up, even before the U.S. actually enters the war in 1941. And so we'll talk a little bit about World War II, because that's really the height of operations here. So just in terms of the employment, we had 25,000 people working at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, mostly civilians, some military staff here as well. This was the largest military supply base. It actually gets overtaken during World War II. There are other bases that are built that are larger than the Brooklyn Army Terminal. But at the outset of the war, this is the biggest base. And it's really the headquarters of operations for the largest port facility in the country. The New York Port of Embarkation moves more troops and more supplies than any other port in the country, actually about twice as much as San Francisco. And Cindy just pulled up this map here. What you can see in these dark areas, these are all the different facilities of the New York Port of Embarkation. So it wasn't just the Army Terminal that was moving troops and supplies. You can see the Bush Terminal, you can see Cave and Point in New Jersey, you can see the Staten Island terminals. And actually, if you were a soldier going overseas from New York in World War II, there was a 60% chance that you were going to be shipped out from Pier 90 on the west side of Manhattan. So actually, only about 20% of all the soldiers that shipped out from New York actually left from this place, the Brooklyn Army Terminal. That's not to diminish its history, though. Why it was so important was because this was the headquarters. This was the nerve center that really ran all the port operations. And so speaking of those port operations, I want to show you a couple of things that we can see in this atrium that you can check out next time you come by.
Andrew,
yeah.
Andrew, while you're moving to the next space, I have this chart here that shows passengers that were shipped out to share with folks. So I'm going to pull that up
sure.
here.
So one thing to note about this, you can see, so this is the ranking of the ports of embarkation and all the troops that they shipped out. But the important thing to remember here is that this is the whole port. So you see New York here, 3.2 million soldiers are shipped out. That is across all those facilities. And again, about 60% of those soldiers, about 1.8 million, shipped out from the west side of Manhattan. About 600,000 shipped out from the Brooklyn Army Terminal. And you can see the second ranked with 1.7 million is the San Francisco Port of Embarkation. But I want to show you this image here. If you could pull the slide down, Sin.
Okay.
So here you can see we have these famous signs inside the atrium, which mark different locations around the world. So here you can see it says South America. If we walk down the whole length of the space, we could also see other places, including India and Africa and the Balkans, Greece, Portugal, the Azores. These actually all date from the post-war period when this was part of something called the Army Transportation Terminal Command. So after World War II, this really became, the main shipping point on the East Coast for soldiers going largely to Europe, not exclusively, but the main run that was done out of here in the late 40s, 50s, and early 60s was between Brooklyn and Bremerhaven, Germany. And that is where maybe the most famous visitor to the Army terminal went in 1958, which was Elvis Presley. So he's shipped out on September 22nd, 1958 to Germany. I say, maybe the most famous person, because I should mention that President Franklin D. Roosevelt did visit here at least twice while he was president. I don't know when the last time we had a presidential visit here, but it's been a long time. I see we have a question here about where the trains connect to. And I want to tell you a little bit about this train here. Yeah, and so Amanda asks, yes, Elvis did ship out from here. So his train went from Fort Hood, Texas. I believe he stopped in Memphis, and then he came right here. He never set foot in this building, though. His train actually drove right out onto Pier 4, and then he walked from the train onto his ship after doing 2 press conferences and having to walk back and forth along the gangway 8 times so all the photographers could get a picture of him. So he was game for it. But I wanted to show you this train that you see right here. So this is not a historical train, at least not historical to the Brooklyn Army Terminal. This is actually, some of you may recognize it, this is an old Long Island Railroad bar car. This was moved in here in the 1980s during the renovations. And so it's not a perfect historical artifact, but it's a nice visual artifact that gives you a sense of scale and purpose of this space here.
Andrew,
Now, and then,
we have an incredible historical photo that kind of shows the space looking down at the train cars. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up.
Yeah,
so
great.
People can get that perspective. So you can see this here.
Yeah, there you go. So this is right after they finished construction in 1919. During World War II, it would have looked rather similar, with the exception being you would have forklifts, because forklifts aren't invented until the late 1930s. And they were actually using the crane system less and less and relying more on the 96 elevators that were installed in this complex. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring you up to speed with the history after post Elvis, because I know we're running short on time. But around the time Elvis comes in 1958 is a period of tremendous change, not only in the military but also in New York Harbor and across the shipping industry. One thing that made New York so competitive as a harbor is that we had a lot of labor, because moving stuff off ships is really labor intensive. And we had a lot of warehouse space like this. You could, if a ship came in, you had lots of space to move that stuff into. During the late 1950s, we have the advent of containerization, and those advantages really go away. You no longer need a big workforce. You no longer need lots of indoor space to store stuff, because you can stack those containers outside. And so what happens is the industry starts to leave New York City proper and move to places where there's more open space and better access to rail lines in New Jersey. And so it's around this time, 1964, when they announced the closure of 95 military bases around the world, including the Brooklyn Army Terminal and the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And so this place closes about 2 years later in December 1966. The federal government still continues to operate it for various things, including it became a postal sorting center for a number of years. But in 1966, and you can see here, 1966 is when the Army technically leaves, and then 1975 is when all of the federal tenants leave, and this place is basically abandoned. The city of New York buys it in 1981, and then they begin a renovation, and it opens to its first industrial tenants in 1987. So we've actually had industrial tenants here for over 30 years. And so here in Building B, this building's been completely renovated and mostly occupied since 1990. And then Building A, the renovation was done a little bit after that. So we have a long tradition of industry here. And what's so interesting is that when Cass Gilbert designed this building in 1918, he said explicitly that once the national emergency of the World War was over, this building should be turned over to private industry for manufacturing. It took 70 years to realize that vision, but it did ultimately happen. I see we have a question here about other names of the Brooklyn Army Terminal. That's one of the things that's so challenging about researching this place. And I've spent the last 8 years, traveling to archives around the country and uncovering its history, because it's not very well documented. Some of the other names included the military ocean terminal. It was called the Brooklyn Army Base. But most confusingly is that this place is often synonymous with the New York Port of Embarkation. Now, say in 1920, the whole New York Port of Embarkation for the Army, it was this building. In 1950, it was this building. But during World War II, there were more than a dozen facilities around the harbor. And so as a result, you often find the history of the whole harbor gets conflated with the history of the Brooklyn Army Terminal. And so I read this all the time in books that 3.2 million soldiers passed through the Brooklyn Army Terminal. That is not true. About 600,000 did during World War II. 3.2 million passed through the whole port. So it's confusing because before the war and after the war, those two terms, Brooklyn Army Terminal and New York Port of Embarkation, were synonymous, but during the war, they were not. So, yeah. So I know we're running short on time, Cindy, but does anybody have any other questions?
So we do have a question here from Bruce, and he's wondering, what did New York City pay for the terminal? And around that time, we also have an art show that happens in the very early years, and I thought that might be a fun thing to share with people.
Yeah. So New York City
might remember.
Yeah. So New York City paid $8.5 million for the building in 1981. But $4.5 million of that was a grant from the federal government to buy this building from the federal government. So on balance, it cost $4 million or $1 per square foot, because this whole facility is 4 million square feet. It's absolutely enormous. It's bigger than One World Trade Center, which is about 3.5 million square feet. But yeah, that's a really good point about the art show. So during those years, between 81 and 87, the city was looking for ways to activate the space, raise its profile, just like we do now with the tours. But what they did was they helped to organize an art show here called Terminal New York. And so you can see the whole atrium in here, was covered in these murals, and there were different big art installations in here. We've had the opportunity to meet some of the artists who participated in that show. Everything was on the first floor, though, because none of the elevators worked. So the building was in pretty rough shape in 1983 when that show was put on. But again, we talked about the connections between the maker spaces here and the old rec center wood shop that used to be here for the Army. But we also have this long tradition, going back now almost 40 years, of artists being here in the Army Terminal, and that continues today. We have an art gallery here called Biobat Art Space, but we also have space for actually making art, including the nonprofit Chishama and the organization Art Built Brooklyn. So yeah, that art is a really important part of the Army Terminal's latter day history.
So now is your chance for anybody who's watching, if there is a question. And there's someone watching who's from the pre-K, the Department of Education pre-K Center.
Nice. Yeah.
Good to see you.
So that's great. I should mention that's another thing too, is we have a lot of different facilities for the city. We like to think about the Army Terminal as sort of the back office for the city. A lot of things that, make the city run that we don't think about, don't see, are here. So for example, 311 has a call center here, but we also have a universal pre-K classroom that's here as well. The New York Police Department has both its K-9 training center as well as the harbor unit is based here at the Army Terminal. And we have a large facility for the Department of Transportation. And we still have a big rail facility here as well. The Cross Harbor Railway, which actually brings, we didn't talk about this, but they bring trains back and forth by barge here to the Army Terminal. So if you're interested in infrastructure and transportation, I know a lot of our fans are. This is a great place to see, this transportation hub that we still have here. It's not in the Atrium anymore. It's down the street a little bit.
Andrew, there was a question earlier at the top of the program about the rail links. Could you describe how that works and where the trains go and what they're carrying?
Sure. So if you look back at the trains here, if you look down at the ends in this direction, you can see the railroad tracks down here. And if we look back in this direction, you can see that there's a lobby and there's concrete. The rail line isn't connected to anything anymore. And so the rail link was severed through the building, but we still have a rail line that runs between the two buildings along First Avenue. And so this rail line actually connects to the Long Island Railroad. And there's actually a whole freight system of the Long Island Railroad. It's run by New York and Atlantic Railway. And then we also have a connection up through Sunset Park. It runs up to 29th Street, where we have again, talking about the back office of the city, we have the Sims recycling plant, which is also a yearly participant in Open House New York. It's usually one of the only other places in Sunset Park that's participating. So a lot of people come to the Army Terminal and go to Sims. But so that rail line, so a lot of the trains that come through the Brooklyn Army Terminal campus, they're carrying recyclable material. And then there's actually a spur that connects to the whole subway network. So that's actually how they used to get trains into the subway system. If they were manufactured elsewhere, is actually they would bring them into Sunset Park, take them on these freight lines, and then bring them into the subway system through 39th Street, if you know where that is, right next to the Costco, or right off the off-ramp for the BQE. You can see that rail line there. So yeah, I mean, New York City's freight rail system is really fascinating, and it's really important too, because we are so dependent upon trucks. Not only, they create a lot of pollution and traffic accidents, but also we're so dependent upon one crossing of the Hudson River, which is trucks coming over the George Washington Bridge. So if we can move more stuff by rail, it actually will help with a lot of different issues.
And I just wanted to share, this is a little behind the scenes on Turnstile Tours. You were talking about the research that you've done at various archives. That's so much of what we do as a company, is we're trying to elevate stories that are underrepresented in the record and that are not well documented. And in many cases, that means digging through boxes and boxes of archives, but it also means engaging the public. So many of the stories that we've learned have come from our visitors. We even had a couple that celebrated their 50th anniversary come on a tour, and they'd had their first kiss on one of the balconies.
So yeah, that's a great point, Cindy. I want to share a couple things about the balconies. For one, as Cindy mentioned, people, I'll show you the balconies here again. So yeah, it was actually at the far end of the balcony when that couple shared their first kiss, the far end of the atrium that they told us about. But we had another great balcony story, which was we had someone come on the tour who was a postal worker here. And he said that they were so basically out in the sticks that no one was really supervising them. And so they used to use these balconies to store all of their coolers of beer that they would partake of at any break they could. Another thing you can see out on the balcony, if you can make out that white structure, there's a company here called Zucker Gifts, and that is their sukkah. So they'll have their meals in there during the Jewish, the Jewish high holidays in the fall. So that's something we always get to see during Open House New York as well. But yeah, that's such a great point, Cindy, that I just want to emphasize again, which is that, part of the reason why we do these tours is not for us to talk at you, but for people to come to us And the tours really bring people out of the woodwork who have connections to these sites where we work. So we wouldn't be able to, have this knowledge if it wasn't for giving the tours. So they're an important part of the whole process of documentation, and especially of oral history. So just a big thanks to everybody who's helped us along this journey to learn about this place, including a lot of the people that work here, some of whom have been working here at the Army Terminal for more than 30 years. So there's a long history here. And that's so important, especially as this place is changing. More spaces are getting renovated, more tenants are moving in, which is great. But it's also important, to have those connections to the history.
Yeah, and we find that people who do have those connections, for example, we had a mother and daughter. The mother worked at the Brooklyn Army Terminal as a payroll supervisor during World War II. And then her daughter worked there 2 decades later. And they came on the tour and then we interviewed them right after. And being able to hear their stories meant so much. And so the oral histories that we do for our different programs, we are dedicated to contributing those to public archives. There's one last thing, Andrew. We oftentimes will partner up with Greenwood Cemetery to do a special program about the connection between Greenwood Cemetery and the Brooklyn Army Terminal site. And I think this is such a powerful story. And I have the photos as well in the background, if you'd like to share that before we sign out.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that, Cindy. It's such an important part of our history here that is often forgotten, which is that we talked about sending soldiers overseas, and we brought soldiers back home as well. About 5 million American service members came back through New York after World War II. But here, specifically at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, we received the vast majority of the remains of Americans who died overseas in the war. So actually, about 3/4 of all American remains were received here and processed at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. And for a period of about 4 years, from 1947 to 1951, the entire third floor of Building A and Building B were dedicated just to receiving these 140,000 remains. And so what they would do is they would come here and they would make sure everything was in order after they came off the ships, and then we had an entire group of hundreds and hundreds of soldiers that were stationed here, and their job was to escort every last casket back home to wherever their families requested they be delivered. So from here, trains would fan out across the country carrying those remains. So it was a really, really important and solemn responsibility of the Brooklyn Army Terminal. Some of those people, they were taken just a few blocks away up to Greenwood Cemetery. And so that's been a really special program I've been able to do over the last couple of years, is to share that story and other connections between Greenwood and the Brooklyn Army Terminal, because they are very close. And actually the sort of originator of the Brooklyn Army Terminal, the person who came up with the idea and supervised it, was Irving T. Bush. So if you know Bush Terminal just up the block here, he's buried in Greenwood Cemetery as well. So that's a really neat program. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for sticking around for so long. I know we went over a few minutes, but we had so many great questions, and we wanted to make sure that we did justice to the history, but also give our tenants here the opportunity to share their story and give you the chance to peek inside their space. So I hope you enjoyed the program. I know I really did. And thank you so much to everybody for all the questions.
And thank you, Andrew, for taking us on this wonderful tour, and for everyone joining us on this journey. Dan, who's watching, said he worked there in 1985 when transit stores, I'm not sure what the Grumman buses were there.
Oh my God. What a crazy story too. Yeah, that's another great one, which is when the city bought a fleet of Grumman articulated buses and they all cracked in half. And so they brought them all here to the Brooklyn Army Terminal to try and fix them. They weren't able to fix them, and they pawned them off. I believe they were sold to Newark, New Jersey. I could be wrong, but they pawned them off on somebody else. But yeah, that's another interesting little tidbit of history here as well. So thanks so much for sharing that.
And we'll also share if the Brooklyn Army Terminal is on the ferry line. So you can see it if you take the South Brooklyn ferry or the Rockaway ferry. The Brooklyn Army Terminal is one of the stops, and there's a big open plaza. And so we encourage you, to take the ferry if that's convenient for you. If you'd like to come to, for example, there's currently drive-ins that are being hosted on the weekends by Rooftop Films, which is they're also a tenant inside the Brooklyn Army Terminal. And then there's a whole bunch of food manufacturers that are based at the Brooklyn Army Terminal as well, that are making anything from Japanese salad dressings like Momo dressing to the conery, which makes these cones that you see out at a lot of the ice cream shops in the city. All different city saucery, making red sauces for Italian dishes. So there's so many different kinds of businesses and people. Jacques Torres, Maria mentioned.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we thank everyone. I'd like to share as we close out, if you'd like to support the work that we're doing, this is a trying time for us. I'll be honest about that. We just want to express how thankful we are to Open House New York for affording us this opportunity, and also to the New York City Economic Development Corporation, which is the nonprofit that's really making these spaces affordable to tenants and also giving us the opportunity to help document and share this story. It's something we so appreciate. And so if you'd like to watch other programs, or some of them we do free because we understand not everyone. Other people are in similar positions as we are right now. But then we also have some paid programs that help us get by and support ourselves. Oh, Andrew, I see that we're looking at a cat.
So normally I have an audience of about 100 people on these tours, and today I have an audience of one, which is the Atrium cat. I was trying to get her on camera, but she's a little elusive today.
So if anyone would like to help support our work, it starts at $5 a month, and it helps us continue to do these virtual programs. We've now done over 150 public programs since the start of the pandemic. Some of them folk do deep dive on oral history or genealogy or the history of Brooklyn or the port. And other ones are more about the stories of extraordinary contributions that New Yorkers, like the people that we met with today, are making to New York City. So craftspeople, manufacturers, street vendors. And so you can support the work that we're doing here through going to our website and joining as a member.
And I just wanted to mention one more thing, Cindy, which is you can join us our next program. I'm going to be at dry dock number 1 at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, at the Brooklyn Navy Yard at 4 o'clock. But also check out, there's a whole lineup of programs, both live and recorded with different artists and manufacturers at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. So please check that out. And then tomorrow at 10:30 a.m., we're going to be going live to Prospect Park and looking at the water system and the historic 1869 well house building. So you can also just go to turnstyletours.com/OHNY. You can see all that. You can see our special maps that we've made for this event. And then you can also see a number of past programs with some great partners that we put up. So the National Lighthouse Museum, the Waterfront Museum, Rock in the Boat in the Bronx, the Bound House, the Urban Garden Center in East Harlem. So there's a bunch of cool things that we hope you'll check out.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. We're so grateful, and we hope everyone stays healthy during this time and that you'll stay in touch. And if you have personal stories that connect to the site, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us at info@turnstyletours.com, and we'll help document those stories and make sure they get into public archives. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.